Congressman Hill, it's good to see you, sir.
Chuck, good to be with you. Thanks for the invitation.
Let me start quickly with the debt limit news. You saw the note from the Treasury Secretary. She says we're technically going to hit it in 6 days. Extraordinary measures, et cetera, can take us to June. Look, I assume you're not in the camp that says let's wait till June, the day before, to do this. When do you expect a serious proposal to raise the debt limit to start? When do you expect this debate to start? Obviously, the White House wants to start it today. When do you expect your side to sort of start this conversation?
Well, Chuck, it's such an important question because House Republicans certainly want to see our government financed in the right way, have the right decisions made about FY24 spending, and raise the debt ceiling with some spending controls. Those conversations have already started. I think you alluded to that in your previous panel. Republicans are talking among themselves to come up with what are the best things that we should do about spending controls, budget reforms that we would want to see attached to a debt ceiling increase that then would produce a majority vote in the House from Republicans, 218 votes for Republicans in the House to do that.
But if it can't pass the Senate, is it worth passing?
Well, it's a good point. This is a tough topic in Congress, as you know, year after year. But we want to lead on that in House Republicans, and that's why we're talking among ourselves. And we're certainly going to have those conversations on a bicameral basis that we need to raise the debt ceiling, but we also need to have some budget reforms associated with that. We're going to talk to our colleagues, Republican colleagues in the Senate, to see if they share that view and if they'll defend that position in the Senate.
Do you accept the premise, though, that you only control one half of one of three branches of government, right? The voters set a Democratic majority in the Senate, have a Democratic president. Do you think you should only get a third of what you want instead of maybe half of what you want?
Chuck, good point, but let's think of it this way. As a House Republican majority, we want to model the best behavior that we can on these important issues and offer a contrast to the spending palooza that Joe Biden has offered in his first 2 years in office and go back to pre-pandemic spending priorities and spending debates. I'd like to go back to a time where both Democrats and Republicans thought large budget deficits were a challenge to the nation's future. And CBO is suggesting we're going to have $1.5 trillion deficits as far as the eye can see. So this is a good time to talk about how we can control spending and connect that with the idea of raising the debt ceiling.
Well, you've just scratched a little itch that I have. I want to go back in the Wayback Machine. I'm old enough to remember Simpson Bowls and two people who pulled out of it, Paul Ryan and Barack Obama. And I've always wondered, what if on that front? Let me ask you about what you're doing with crypto. There's regulating crypto and there's deciding whether it should be legal. As a currency, is this something that should be legal, or is it a Ponzi scheme?
Well, I think let's go to basic principles here. Digital assets are something that need oversight and need consumer protection and need the right framework as a legal matter. Secondly, we want innovation for fintech and the use of blockchain to be available in the United States. We want to have the U.S. to be a leader. So we want to create a regulatory legal framework for digital assets, including digital payments, that makes America a leader from an innovation point of view, but also protects consumers and investors.
Okay, let's put this a little bit in English. No offense, and I understand which is, at the end of the day, do you think the U.S. government should help legalize an alternative currency? Or are you trying to work on something that says, if I pull out any piece of currency I have in my pocket has a serial number, which means in theory, every dollar's on the blockchain. Every $5 bill could be on the blockchain. Every $20 bill. You get where I'm going here. Is that what you should be working on, and not have this Bitcoin business, which has basically been used and abused by the worst actors in society?
Well, I think it's important for viewers not to confuse Bitcoin and cryptocurrency with the idea of what we should do about a regulatory process for everything related to digital. And that's why I think it is confusing to a lot of people. I don't endorse personally Bitcoin being currency per se, But we need to have a regulatory regime that allows innovation on a blockchain to include digital payments, whether they're in Bitcoin or a stable coin or payment in U.S. dollars the old-fashioned way. And we don't want that to be moved offshore and not under the oversight of the U.S. And again, that will protect both investors and users and innovators in the fintech space.
Before I let you go, I'd like to get your reaction to the fact that we now have 2 special counsels into 2 presidents on the mishandling of classified information. Number one, do you think the circumstances are different enough? And do you think this is more of an indictment on those 2 individuals or on the system?
Well, it could be systemic and it could be both. Look, it's negligence on both parts to have classified information if it's not under the protocols that govern that classified information, which include storage and access. When I was a White House staffer, I can't tell you anything that was more controlled than that classified information that would come out of the safe for use in a certain meeting and put back in the safe, or those higher classifications that required use only inside a compartmentalized classified information facility. And so negligence plays a role here, and therefore it could be both process and on the part of individuals handling it.
Do you think we need a better system of, I mean, it feels like everything's the honor system. Is that a mistake?
Well, I don't think it is the honor system. And you sign out for these documents. They go back in the safe at night. And when people have them outside, they should have them outside under an agreement, under lock and key that's supervised by the authority that they're connected with. And that's what I think this investigation will show. Is there a process issue, a negligence issue, or both? Because America wants to protect its secrets no matter who's involved.
So if a prosecution is warranted, you think go full steam on both of them?
Well, look, Hillary Clinton had classified information on her home server and her home laptop. Sandy Berger walks out of a storage facility with classified information. I think what the American people want is everyone to be treated equally here and to make sure that everyone who has classified information is held to that same standard. So what I hope comes out of this is everyone's clear on what that standard is, and that the consequences are balanced on both sides now that we have a current president and a former president essentially being investigated for a similar challenge.
Well, except one did not lawfully abide by a subpoena. One didn't have a subpoena issue. I mean, does that matter here? And do you think that's fair to say that there's a difference between the two? That one was more intentional in Donald Trump's case, perhaps, than the other? We don't know yet with Biden.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that's what the investigation's for. The bottom line is, why does the vice president have SCI classified information in his garage? That doesn't make any sense to anybody. And so I think both deserve the investigation from the Department of Justice. And I think the outcomes may be different in terms of what the investigations find to be the case, but we need to have them handled in the same way, and classified information should be handled in the same manner, no matter who has it.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.